Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Rabbi Sammy and Cantor Seid, the new associate rabbi and Jewish educator, respectively, at Adath Jeshurun. We talk about each of their winding roads to joining the clergy, the good fortune of finding a synagogue where each of them can work, and the importance of ice cream on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from the Seids, this week's Who the Folk podcast is sponsored by the Minnesota Jewish Community Foundation, celebrating half a century of impact, advising individuals, families, and nonprofits on charitable giving and endowments. Visit mnjcf.org to start giving your way. Rabbi Sammy and Cantor Seid, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having us.
Happy to be here.
You are the new rabbi and cantor at Adath Jeshurun congregation. I guess for starters, what has your first 5 or so weeks here in Minnesota been like?
It's been a whirlwind. It's the personal part of it started pretty rough. We lost our furniture for the most part, but then we got here. Yeah, that's a story. We can get there. But we got here, and the congregation has been incredible, and learning how things are done the Adath way has been really fun and inspiring.
Yeah, there's a real warmth from everybody, from the staff, from the clergy, from congregants. The amount of cookies and other baked goods that welcomed us.
I think we've gained about 10 pounds each.
We did our best. We did our best to avoid letting those things go bad, and we did what we could.
Because you feel bad turning stuff down from people.
And it tastes good.
That's the real problem.
It tastes really good.
If
Who
we
says
had
no
really
cookies?
bad bakers here, it would be much easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true.
Everybody seems like a professional quality submit to the Minnesota State Fair baker.
Oh, see, you're dropping that knowledge already. You've been here a month, and you're already, like,
We've
throwing
received
around the state fair.
all the articles about the deep fried ranch this year, and been told it's the high holidays of Minnesota.
The secular high holidays.
It really is the secular high. I'm a little afraid of the deep fried ranch, I'm not going to lie.
Right? Yeah. You know, it was the first story I heard on the local NPR affiliate when I turned it on was, we're doing deep fried ranch.
The day they announce the new fair foods each year is a legit holiday here.
It's
like
Lichot.
It is.
It's the mood setter. It's the tone setter.
It really sets the tone for the rest of summer into the lead up of the fair.
Yeah, right? You got to get that spiritual elevation leading into it.
That's right.
You can't go 0 to 60 or you won't be ready for it. I do mean for Rosh Hashanah and for the State Fair, it sounds
Obviously,
like.
yes. I mean, unfortunately, this year there's a little bit of gap in between the two. So
Yeah.
we have almost the full month.
So we'll have time to really think about the sins that we did at the fair.
Achet shechatanu, I've eaten too much deep fried ranch.
Yeah.
I come before you to make tshuva. That's true.
It's going to be could be the strangest Yom Kippur ever. It's never thought of it in that way.
It makes fasting easy if you've been building up for it.
I suppose that's true. So, what is it like coming to this community, coming to a new community? And obviously, that is a bit of I don't want to call it occupational hazard as a rabbi, but in a way it kind of is, because most rabbis tend to move and cantors tend to move at some point in their clergy careers.
It's a service position, and you go where the service is needed, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't speak for Sammy, but I'm going to. You know, both of us lived in California a majority of our lives.
Okay.
In my case, my whole life, except for a semester in Jerusalem.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And so the sort of moving congregation is also met with a change in culture. I mean, it's very different in Minnesota,
Yeah.
both in weather and in attitude, in the way that people are with each other. And we feel pretty at home here. I'd say the way that we live is, maybe we were Minnesotan all along.
And I'll add too, I mean, I think, one of the things I feel that Heather's talking about that I experience is I would need to be able to be a member of a synagogue as a layperson to be able to be the clergy in that community, right? It needs to, we have a lot of skin in the game. Like it's high stakes for us. We have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old who we need it to feel like their spiritual home too.
Yeah.
And so as much as community members will look to what our kids do and how they behave and who they are, and that's all well and good, they should get to experience what it means to be a member of a community. And so it matters to us to make sure we're in a place where they get to do that. And if we get to be in service in that process, that's exactly where we want to be.
So both of your journeys to the clergy are sort of winding in a way.
Yeah.
Cantor, I want to start with you. You graduated from the Boston University School of Music, and then got an MBA in finance and marketing.
After being a teacher for a little while at a private school.
Okay, so right,
Extra wines.
seriously, and the journey ended with you being ordained a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
What was the path that led you? I mean, because that's definitely a different road than I think a lot of people take.
Absolutely. And I just want to throw in there for any sports fans that I also worked at the Clippers and the Dodgers for a short bit.
Really?
And at Special Olympics Southern California. So I just want to throw that in for anybody who's listening who likes sports. Come find me, we'll talk.
Which is way more exciting because I wrote for the school newspaper in the sports section. That's the last time I did anything directly connected to sports.
In any case, so I started, and I'm a very musical person, and I love using my voice, but I have performance anxiety. It's pretty intense.
Okay.
And I got to graduation and had a lot of conversations, hard conversations with my teachers, and elected not to continue in the opera world.
Okay.
But that sort of never really goes away, the music and the wanting to perform. And so all through the twists and turns, there was like a wanting to use the voice again. And I actually converted to Judaism as well 10 years ago.
Okay.
And my first Shabbat, I wanted to read Torah. And so Sammy and his mom, who teaches Torah reading classes at Herschel, taught me how to read, and I did. It was Zachor, right?
So here's a real fun piece about that. It was Parshat Ki Teitzei, which in its normal cycle usually comes around August, which was the Shabbat right after her mikvah and Beit Din. The maftir reading for that, the final Torah reading that week, was the reading that is the maftir, the special maftir inserted for Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat before Purim that usually comes in March, which was my bar mitzvah portion. So the first time I read Torah as a bar mitzvah were the exact same verses of Torah that Heather read when she was a bat mitzvah.
Oh, come on.
And it was just by happenstance of when the Beit Din that was scheduled probably would have been earlier than that, but one of the people who was going to sit on it was out of town the week or two before that, and so they rescheduled it to later. So it just
worked out.
Shook out that way.
And it also happened to be the Shabbat where the High Holiday Cantor was coming to teach tunes over Kiddush lunch. And so I got up and I did my Torah reading, and I sat back down, and she zoomed over to me and said, "I've got music for you. You're going to help me lead."
She was
Jewish for literally a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She goes,
Oh my
"We're
God.
going to meet."
Like 3, I think she was
I want
Jewish
you
for
to
like
do one
4
of the
days at this point.
One of the recitations of Kol Nidre, like, we're going to do some stuff together. So she's a wonderful, wonderful human. One of my closest cantorial friends, Cantor Amy Robinson Katz. She's incredible. She's at a congregation B'nai Israel.
Yeah, Congregation B'nai Israel
in Tustin,
in California.
Okay.
And so she sent me all this music, and we met ahead of time, and we talked through a bunch of it, and I helped lead my first high holidays as a Jew. And then after we were done, she said, "You might want to think about cantorial school." She was still in cantorial school, and so she invited me to come up and visit. And you know what's a really good loophole for performing is if it's not for you. It's for gratitude, it's for a community. It's not attached to $500 tickets a night.
Yeah.
And so I got to use my voice again, and I got to use it for good things. And so I took all the twists and turns and I turned it into something at the end that really feels authentic.
I'm still locked into this whole thing of you being a Jew for like less than 100 hours, and the Cantor's already like, good, you're helping me lead high holidays. That's phenomenal.
And that
haven't heard
same
you sing
September.
it. I haven't heard you sing. Clearly, you've got a voice. There's no question.
That's very nice.
You don't get that invite just 'cause, though, I would like to think.
It's a very nice thought. I will say there is something to, sitting in a congregation and you can kind of hear voices around you and you're like, oh, I'm going to go talk to that person. I'm going to go talk to that person. Musical people like to find each other. We
Sure.
like to create together. And so whether or not I have a good voice, I have a voice that somebody wanted to create with, and I feel very honored by that.
That same September, too, she was already teaching a Hebrew school class after being Jewish for 3 weeks.
Forgot
And
about
became every student's favorite teacher in that Hebrew school where we were. Fast track.
Yes, seriously. So you mentioned the teaching, Rabbi, which I think is sort of important to note because you sort of have two titles here at Adath.
Mhm.
You are the assistant cantor to Chazan Joanna Delkin, who is fabulous, but you're also the Berman Family Chair in Jewish Learning.
Yeah.
How does, you worked as a teacher also, you taught in Hebrew school, again, after just a few weeks. What was the appeal for you for it? Because it seems like it's not, and I don't mean this is pejorative, not like just a cantoral role.
Right.
There's a lot, there's more to it than, again, just being cantor.
Yeah. I feel really strongly that we need to be teaching our children to be teachers right now, especially our Jewish children. There's a lot of anti-Semitism running rampant right now. There's a lot about Israel, a lot of misinformation about Israel, and I want our kids to be armed with a love of who they are and where they come from, but also with information, because confidence is built on competence. And if they are competent and understand where they're coming from, they will be able to present themselves confidently in the world and be able to represent themselves, but also all of us.
Yeah.
So I was really excited by the possibility of getting to work and learn from Chazan Dolkin, but also like have my own piece of it and get to play and learn with these kids and learn how best to help them be confident and competent. Any thoughts, Rabbi?
That's pretty good.
So Rabbi, I turn to you now. You have a history degree, and then you got a teaching certificate. So you've also worked in education. What was the draw for you to go to the rabbinate and become a member of the clergy?
Sure. I grew up with some really impressive leadership at my childhood synagogue. I was a young kid when Rabbi Brad Artson served as the pulpit rabbi over at Congregation Eilat in Mission Viejo, California. And as a little kid growing up there, I got to see a pretty vibrant community of people led by someone who everybody loved. I didn't know what it was he did. I just knew that everyone loved him and he was brilliant, and it brought community.
Eat bagels at Kiddush lunch.
Right,
maybe?
and announce pages in English and say nice things in English, during sermons. And I remember thinking, he seems to have a really profoundly, whatever the little kid version of, he seems to have a positively profound impact on people. I would like to be able to be in a role where I can do that for other people. And I thought I wanted to be a rabbi when I was in elementary school, until it dawned on me that meant I would miss my own kids' Little League games on Saturday mornings. And so I perished the thought for a while. And through, through my undergraduate education, when I was initially pursuing teaching history and then going into a credential program, I found myself more and more pulled back into the coursework that was specifically around Jewish education, Jewish history.
You almost got a minor, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I found out when I was filling out the paperwork to graduate that I was one class shy of a Jewish studies minor, even though I wasn't pursuing it. I just accidentally took enough Jewish lit and Jewish history, and I took a Yiddish class that covered the language requirement. It was kind of a wild realization. And what was interesting was through my high school years, I was involved with USY. I was the religious education vice president my senior year. But then when I got into college, I a little bit felt like I sort of reclaimed this second child of the Passover Seder, the one who says, what mean these traditions to you, in a way that I was genuinely curious why they mattered to other people, despite my retreat from my own observance. And the more and more I studied, I felt like I was anthropologically studying my own people. And then coming back to where I had grown up in Southern California, there was a need when my childhood synagogue unfortunately wasn't able to be sustainable, merged with a nearby shul. It became a duly affiliated Reform and conservative community, and so they wanted someone who had experience in USY to come back as a youth advisor to help that side of things. And that was, for me, in some ways, one of the biggest draws back. And there wasn't any one epiphany, so to speak. There wasn't any one sudden spark, but while I was having this parallel experience of pursuing education, student teaching in public schools, and teaching in Hebrew school and working with my teens and their families, I realized just what a greater profound impact I could have holistically on who these kids were. Whereas in the public school, God bless any teacher that can handle this. Teaching to the state standards felt like I was teaching to a test, not teaching students. And I wanted to be involved with people, not test taking.
As a parent of a recent public school graduate and a current public school high schooler, yes, it's teaching to the test. Yeah. It's like that here, unfortunately, too.
It's
everywhere, I think.
Congrats on your graduate.
Yeah, mazel tov. And so, yeah, and that was my experience, that I loved the students I got to work with in every setting. And I just felt like what my reach could be and how I could help inform who they grew to be as people in that present and for their future just couldn't be fully realized by what my role could be to them if I pursued more of an involvement in the Jewish community. And through enough conversations and exploring it and learning it and being by Heather's side and her path to Judaism, I really learned a lot about my own tradition. I was refreshed a lot about my own tradition, things that I had not really thought about in a while. And I learned a lot about myself and what I felt like my role could be. And ultimately, it all pointed toward rabbi was the right path. So.
I always find it interesting because I think there are some people who know that they want to become a member of the clergy from a very young age, and there are other people who just it's a second career, or they figure it out, after they've been in the professional world, or I think a lot of times it's for those people, it's probably people like you, Rabbi, where you've had that connection, deep connection to Judaism and Jewish life, and then there was the aha moment where it all sort of came together for you in your mind.
I think you're right, and I think one of the things I think that Heather was speaking to about equipping these young people with an experience that helps them understand who they are. I was very much gifted that foundation. It was a real blessing from my parents, who I went to Jewish day school from kindergarten through 6th grade. We were very much involved in what I like to say was an unofficial chavara of we're every Friday night we were either hosting Shabbos dinner or going to someone else's, to the point where when I was in high school, my mom compromised and would let me, we would have Shabbos dinner early so I could go to the football games, that kind of very suburban experience.
We're very connected to that chavara,
right,
which is amazing.
Very much so. And I think that I can't say every, but I think a lot of young Jewish people go through those ebbs and flows of how they feel connected and how they might not feel so. And for me, because I still had that foundation, there was always something that I could build on, that if I ever tore it down a little bit, I could build it back up, or at least have a lot of help in building it back up.
It's not so much a tear down at that point, it's just a remodel.
A remodel, exactly. We put in a nice new deck. It's what it felt like. It extended onto it. Right, to the point, and these family friends that, I grew up with, who I actually just got a call today about one of them interviewing for a youth director position at a shul nearby where we grew up together. And the question came from a rabbi who actually did Heather's conversion, one of the people who taught this class, and said, "Do you know so-and-so?" And I said, do I know so-and-so? We grew up together.
Oh
Like,
my
I have only good things to
gosh.
say about this person, right? So it really was that rooted foundation that, one of the big differences between Minnesota and California, I think, is that a lot of folks from California are transplants from somewhere else, right, building that generational rootedness, but this still felt like it had that rootedness of these same people that I grew up with, got to be in support of in their pursuits.
So one of the things that I find really interesting about the positions you each have here and being a rabbi and cantor married to each other is that when looking for a job, you're not really looking for one job.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for two jobs. And, I mean, fortunately, you're lucky enough to be able to be in the same synagogue.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
But, like, how does that job search work?
That's a really hard question that we've been talking about since we both went to school. And Sammy took a kind of faster path. We had children while we were in school, and so it's a little bit harder on the mom, I'm going to say. And so I took my time a little more in school, and I think that helped because then we weren't looking for jobs at the same time. But, I graduated last year, and we had to start really doing the things that we were talking about. And
I think there are components to it too, and to sort of zoom out, and I think this is still responding to that question and statement, right? Is that I remember once somebody asking Rabbi Artson when I was when I was in school at the Ziegler School, what's the most essential thing to being a good rabbi, right? And he gets this question asked, it feels like every other week, and his response in a much more eloquent version than this was, you have to start by striving to be a good person. And then you learn a lot of other things on top of that. And so I think that a lot of what informed, at least the way Heather and I are in our marriage, I mean, she's my best friend, and we're lifelong chavrutot, and we are, spousal couple, right? It's like every element of that, and we are colleagues, and we work well together. And I think that, we've been together for 18 years now. Mm-hmm. And it feels like throughout our life, there's been this experience of, okay, it's your turn to go to school while it's my turn to work. And now, okay, oh, look, we're both working at the same time. Wow, what a miracle, right? And so we've kind of gone back and forth with that. And we've never laid out, a long-term vision plan in what that looks like, but we've been really open to what each other needs and what each other wants and is hoping for.
And how to what life provides.
Right. And we, like the classic expression, humans plan, God laughs, right? We sort of have our ideas of what we hope can come, and then we respond to realities in their real time. And so, when certain opportunities come our way, we get to turn to each other and say, oh, this looks interesting. This could be something we could really do either together or in sort of separate but supportive ways. And this just feels like, perfection's quite a word, but a near perfect culmination in this ability to come to be in the same building in the same community, with phenomenal mentorship for both and each of us.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, it's a miracle that we get to do this together, yes, but also to be a part of a clergy team where we already feel respect, admiration, and love for the other members of the clergy team.
Very much so.
Like, we get to learn from both of them. I feel like Rabbi Weiniger has really helped both of us and will continue to, and so has Chazan Dolkin. And it feels really like a blessing to get to be on the same team, but also be on a team with people that we really respect and think very highly of.
That is lovely. All of it. But there is also the degree of just dumb luck. That
for sure
this was the synagogue.
Certainly.
That there was both opportunities for you out there.
Yeah.
And really, a lot of this comes down to, I just threw my name on placement this year to see what was available.
Yeah.
And I my mom, who passed 2 years ago, was an incredible person, but she was also the smartest person I knew. She was the first female dean of faculty at Pomona College. She's an incredible human, and she would do this thing where she would throw her name into the ring for a job that she thought was maybe she wasn't quite good enough yet, but she wanted to test out the waters. And this was a little bit what that was. We threw our hat in the ring and said, hey, would you be interested in hiring a married couple, and who we are, and here we are.
I mean, and I think it's a little bit easier, I think, when for the rabbi in this case, because like a rabbi position, a rabbi posting, they're an assistant or associate, whatever title you throw in front of the word rabbi, is a little bit more easier just because it's a little bit more straightforward in a way. I would think. I mean, looks, maybe
Would you explain that a little bit
well,
more?
yeah, I think because my understanding of the roles, obviously there was the assistant or associate rabbi role, and then there was sort of the Jewish educator role.
Right.
So I think finding a couple who had both the rabbi and
someone with a background in education who was also a clergy person.
who also happens to be feels like
Yeah.
sort of a nice bonus to it.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to sort of the dumb luck thing. But
Yeah.
but like the rabbi position, whether it's a straightforward rabbi or a straightforward cantor position, that always feels a little bit easier. Like there's a little more of a direct line.
Sure.
Yeah.
Than the situation. Then it's which is it's not about the two of you. It's more about the positions here at Adath.
Yeah.
That's it. Just the confluence of things just happened to work out.
Yeah.
And I want to speak to that too. I mean, I think that's one of the things about Adath that really makes this a special place, right? You know, one of the on these postings and through conversations, something that really stood out to me at least, and I think to Heather as well. There was a part in the description of these positions, both the Berman Family Chair of Jewish Learning, which was posted for rabbis and cantors alike, and the assistant rabbi role. When describing the community, there was a line that said, at Adath Jeshurun, the cantors teach and sing, and the rabbis sing and teach. Right? And
Which was super important to us.
That's really important to us.
In San Diego, I did a lot of speaking engagements. I was on a lot of panels. And it was important to me to be able to continue teaching.
And while I have what we'll call a serviceable voice, I led a lot of davening, and it mattered to me to be able to lead davening.
He has a great voice, but pitch issues.
It's good enough, right? It mattered to me to be able to daven, right? And so,
absolutely.
right? You know, I think there's sometimes, as you know, growing up, I thought that the cantor would sing in Hebrew and the rabbi would announce pages and give sermons in English, and nary the two shall meet, right? and you know, I have come to find that I think when there's a sharing of what the clergy can do together, there is so much to be offered from every angle on this, right? Getting to see the way Rabbi Weininger and Chazan Dulkin work together. I mean, the fact that it's live streamed before we got here, getting to see the way that the way that they maneuver together on the bima, and now getting to see the insides on how they meet. There's so much sharing going on in terms of who's teaching and speaking and who's leading and singing, and you know, one of the things we found, I'm not versed in this musical genre by any stretch, but it almost feels like jazz in a way, where it's sort of, all right, now the bass line takes it, and now the piano takes it, and it really feels like a sharing that creates a beautiful song altogether, as opposed to slicing and dicing these pieces in like, well, you're only going to lead davening, and you're only going to give sermons, and you're only going to teach classes, right?
Yeah,
and the only time the cantor's going to teach is if it's liturgy, right? There's so much more to it, and so I think it felt like a really good match, in that's what I think Heather and I often want the rabbinate cantor to feel like, and it feels like that was already brewing here for a while. You know, by the time we connected.
Given that Rabbi Weininger and Chazan Dulkin have had a long-standing relationship, not just here at Adath, but it goes back to, I believe, the rabbi's home community in New York.
I think so. Yeah,
I believe
And
that was
camp, too, I think.
They had some overlap there.
I'm not sure.
They go back a long ways. I know it predates Adath. I can't remember exactly the mechanics of how it worked, but how easy is it to sort of then, as two newcomers, to that brewing partnership? How do you jump in and sort of find your place while also feeling like you're part of it all?
A lot of it, I think, comes down to a humility that's shared, right? I think that One of the things that Rabbi Weininger offered right away coming in, he talked a lot with us, we talked a lot together about leading with curiosity, right? And trying to learn. And he was so supportive in saying, I know you've already been doing this for some time, and also there's a lot of newness, which is naming everything true about this, right? I don't feel like a seasoned vet in this by any stretch. I don't know when the imposter syndrome goes away, if it ever does, right? But there is a lot to learn about who the people are here, how individually and communally and broadly Minnesotan speaking. And there's a lot to learn, the Adath ways and how things are done here, and how this has remained a vibrant community since the 1860s, predating the movement itself.
Right.
And
you could see that in the way that they present things. So when we came for our interview weekend, we did a Shabbat service, a Friday night service, and we talked through things, and they made so much room for us to share what we've done and what we would like to do. And it was clear it wasn't about any one person, it was about the prayer, which I think really is what it comes down to, right? It's not about, so-and-so wants to do the teaching. It's important that the teaching gets done. And then we have the conversation about who would be best at teaching this. Let's talk about it. Who's most passionate about it? It's really quite beautiful.
Can I share a story that, it never sounds good to say, like, this is how humble I can be. That's not at all what I mean for this to be. But I remember my first, we had already.
He's so humble.
You're so humble. We had already, I'm like Moses. I'm the most humble there ever was. We had already worked in other capacities together, co-rabbinic cantorial interns, co-youth directors, working at a day camp where she was my direct supervisor for some time, when she interned before, while I was already ordained, she was, she was my intern.
Yeah.
I mean, we've worked together in all kinds of ways. But my first, and we'd done high holidays together in different capacities, but my first high holidays after being ordained officially, a congregant came up, wonderful, wonderful, loving man, and right before Rosh Hashanah services started, he said, "Rabbi, are you nervous?" And I said, and with honesty, I don't really feel nervous. I'm excited. I feel ready and raring, whatever version of that I said. And then this man asked the same question 10 days later on Yom Kippur, and he said, "Rabbi, are you nervous?" And I said, you asked me that on Rosh Hashanah, and do I seem nervous? Is that what you're asking? And he said, "No, you don't seem nervous. That's why I'm asking." And I said, well, I mean, honestly, I'm just a vessel for what's happening here, right? I'm not the one doing any work. If anything, God's doing work. God should be nervous today. I'm fine though, And I think there's a certain amount of, and my favorite compliment. I think one of the nicest comments.
So humble.
So humble.
Wow.
The humbleness is just oozing out.
All of it. I think one of my favorite pieces of feedback that I got once, that same high holidays, was from a congregant who, she herself was a third-generation Jewish educator, and her adult daughters were Jewish educators, and she's lived in different parts of the country and the world, and she said to me, this was one of the most meaningful high holiday experiences I've had in a while. And I don't ever like to grill anybody on the high holidays, but she has a lot of experience with this. So I said, do you mind sharing why? And she said, because you and the cantorial soloist who I was working with at the time, she said, the two of you created the space for the community to have their high holiday experience, and then you got out of the way. And that meant the world to me, right? That meant the world to me. To be able to help guide people to where they need to be in that moment is, to me, what it's ultimately more about than what I said.
Absolutely. Now, also, the correct answer for that congregant who asked you, are you nervous, would have been, well, I wasn't until you asked me.
Until now.
I mean, I was doing fine, but now I'm
I was
sweating.
fine, but now I'm freaking out a little bit.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you'll have to save that one if somebody
right.
asks you that.
Are you nervous? Now I am. Thanks a lot. I was trying to be humble.
All right, so I'm going to pivot away from the Bima or the congregation. What have you, obviously you're newcomers to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here 22 years, and I think to some people I am also still a newcomer
Oh my
to Minnesota. So that's, that is what it is.
So true.
What have you gotten to do and enjoy out in Minnesota as this is the best time of the year in the state?
Well, there's a lot of lakes here. I'm not sure if you know.
There is? Why has nobody told me
Are
that?
Which,
so
by the
many
way,
lakes.
this immediately struck us that it's called the land of 10,000 lakes, only to
There's
learn that there are 14,000.
14,000.
I thought it was like 11,000.
So
No, it's 14,000.
Oh, maybe more have been created then, I guess.
Apparently.
But this just felt so Minnesotan because where we're from in California, if there were 14,000 lakes, they'd round it up
Maybe
to
20,000,
15,000.
yeah.
Right? They'd say we're the land of 20,000 lakes, and here was we only have 10,000. No need to inflate our numbers.
I love that you've been here a month and you've already figured out how
Yeah.
Minnesotan that is.
Just playing it down.
So we've seen quite a few lakes.
That's great.
We like to be coming from California, like to be in nature. So we've gone out a couple places just to enjoy the nature. Our kids love all the parks.
Gotta say,
So many good parks.
seeing
here.
this through the eyes of a 7-year-old and 4-year-old, the playgrounds in this area are off the charts. They're amazing. We took them to French Regional Park.
Oh, French Park's great. It's up right
Oh
by my
my
house.
gosh.
Oh yeah, you're right around there.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah, we're in Plymouth, so it's
Great park.
It's
best.
beautiful.
That playground is unbelievable.
We were there for like 2 hours and we had to pull them off of the playground equipment.
I mean, it was like the mansion of playgrounds
Yeah.
with the 3-story rope
Oh,
deal.
yeah, that
and
rope
the-
thing's insane.
It was so fun. It was so cool. So, getting to see just these, I mean, every time we've driven them anywhere, they've gone, oh, can we go to that playground? Can we go to that
one?
playground?
Yeah.
And I want to stop at all of them and
Yeah,
get
for
to
sure.
see it. So
You know
that's
what we
been
haven't
amazing.
done that I really want to do is go to Sebastian Joe's.
Yes, the ice cream
We've
here.
been like waiting to go there. We really want to go.
I have to say, when people ask me my favorite food, I have to make something up because an adult, you can't say ice cream is your favorite food.
Yes, you can.
I'll start doing that then, if that's allowed.
Yes, you can. Listen, anybody who scoffs at that, I'm not sure you want those people in your life.
That is fair. I will start saying ice cream then.
Please.
Thank you for the permission and the invitation. I feel.
I think this
feel-
has been a healing moment for him.
Yeah, I feel like I found my
I think
people.
You look like you needed that.
I have. I've had to cover something up. People say, "What's your favorite food?" I always say brisket, which it's great, but ice cream tops
Rabbi,
everything.
what's your favorite food?
Ice cream.
There you go.
Specifically, am I allowed to say brand names?
Go for it.
Ben and Jerry's.
Oh, gosh.
Right, the Ben and
Well,
Jerry's.
you haven't had Sebastian Joe's
uh,
yet. Let's hold on.
That's true. That's
Let's
fair.
hold on.
I've
So
heard
far, your
debates
favorite.
about graders versus this
my
and
gosh,
that and the
yeah,
other.
we've
It's
heard a lot of
amazing.
debates.
But yeah, but I mean, all of these. I mean, so much
What
of the
else have we
outdoor
done?
environment. I mean, we've also.
Oh, we
you
went
know-
to Al's breakfast yesterday.
that was so
Have
cool.
you been
Classic.
there?
Okay,
It's
I've been there.
amazing.
Dickie County.
Classic
It was
place.
so fun, and that's one of the things that we're trying to take advantage of as much as we can. Like our one day out of the office typically is Wednesdays, and
Oh,
so
sure.
at least during the summer when we drop our kids off, we try to find what seems like a
cool
fun breakfast
breakfast
spot.
place.
Before
If
unpacking.
anyone has
and
suggestions, reach out.
Yeah.
Let us know where we should go.
would love to hear more, and everyone has been just so. Everyone treats it like they are the ambassadors to this area. Like,
It's true.
let me tell you where all the best spots
Yeah.
are. And it's kind of funny because in a way, it's a little bit reminiscent of when we were going to live in Jerusalem for the for the school year. When I was still in rabbinical school, was everybody had their falafel guy
Oh,
or
yeah.
their hummus guy or their like you have to right and I mean I had been, but this was only for like a week or two at a time. This is it's a very reminiscent feeling of let me shepherd you through the amazing awesomeness that is the surrounding area. And I tell you, come from California. Californians don't know what's happening here. The only thing we got was, doesn't it get really cold there in the winter? And by the third person who said that, instead of getting defensive, my response was,
Yes,
it
it
does.
does.
We have seasons here, and you don't have that in Southern California.
Not at all.
So lay off.
Where we're from, you didn't make a backup plan in case it rained.
No.
That's true.
You made a backup plan in case an earthquake or a fire happened, but definitely not rain.
Right. That's right. So, and I know also I saw from the social media posts, you guys did the camp.
Oh,
Tour.
yeah.
Amazing.
We went to Herzl and we went to Ramah. It was so
much
amazing.
fun. I have to tell you, so we arrived at Herzl right after they'd finished dinner, they'd finished Birkat Hamazon, and there was some sort of ruach-y song
It was
thing going on.
beautiful and
And we
chaotic
walk
and
in.
organized all at the same
Yep.
time.
And there were, dozens of kids standing on the benches by the tables, and our 7 and 4-year-olds looked at us with very inquisitive and confused expressions, as if to say, "Are we allowed to do that?" And,
And
we said,
then they
"Yeah, go ahead, go for it."
did.
And they
They
did,
did
and they
it.
didn't know what they were singing,
But
but they
they
were
were
trying to
standing
shout
on the
along,
tables.
and And we turned to our 7-year-old and said, next year you'll be old enough to come here for the summer. And she squealed with delight. She said, absolutely. And
That's
then,
awesome.
very similar experience getting to be at Ramon,
Yeah.
getting to realize, what a beautiful environment and what intentional learning behind everything that goes on. And it was a whole lot of fun and a whole lot of diving right into it. It was a really good time.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I've always loved that all the clergy from all the synagogues here go to the camps where their kids are
It's
at.
pretty
It just
much one
is-
of the best parts of the job, I'd say.
Built
Get
in-
outside, you get to hang out with some cool kids. It was fun.
Built
The
in.
whole USY board from Adath was at
They were at Herzl.
Herzl.
A
That's
bunch of them are serving as Ozrim or
So we
as
got
some of
to
the
meet
oldest
them,
campers.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a
Which
really
is,
good time.
it's got to be really neat because you probably didn't have the opportunity to meet those kids. Like, the first time you're meeting them is in their, ultimate environment of
Yes.
camp.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
exactly, you're spot on,
They were
Lonnie.
so
I mean,
relaxed,
we
yeah.
it felt like we were sort of in their home field territory and that they got to be fully themselves
Yeah.
and, playful and deep all at the same time and silly
And
and
actually,
musical.
they
and
met Winnie and Max before they met us.
Oh,
Winnie
that's
and Max
amazing.
went out there, and they were being so sweet with them, and then we came out and
It
we
was
got to
great.
meet them. It was great.
It was a really
great.
exciting time. Really, really good. And it's a great chance. It was a great first impression to get to know them in that environment, like you were saying.
And Winnie's at Olami at the
At the
JCC,
J, sure.
yeah, and Max is here at Camp Mishpacha, and so we're just getting the whole Jewish camp experience. It's really wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, I know we were sitting in your office. I know you mentioned the one time constraint you had was that you got to go pick them up by a certain time. And fortunately, the commute is short enough. You should be fine.
One
I
flight
don't
of
know,
stairs.
I don't
One
know.
flight of stairs, I think you'll be fine. However, we are going to let you go, but not until we ask the last two questions. We always
Sure.
end on. We sort of covered it, but not totally. What is your favorite Jewish food?
Favorite Jewish food? I have to say brisket.
Okay.
I have to. I mean, it's
Besides ice cream, that is.
besides ice cream, right? I mean, Binyamini Yirmiyahu, right? Right? I have to go with brisket. It was so sweet. The community had a welcoming weekend for us, and since it was it was early enough before Shabbos came in,
Yeah.
everyone on their name tags got the question was, and what's your favorite Shabbos food? And so
Oh.
I without hesitation wrote brisket on there. Specifically my mom's brisket
Okay.
too. I
Oh,
have to be
so
really
good.
clear here.
No,
I mean,
that
there's
was what
good
I was gonna
briskets.
ask.
She makes a great
Oh, my mom. I mean,
brisket.
of course, I could list a bunch of good food
Yeah.
that my mom makes for
Yes.
But yeah, that's I have to say that's got to be number one for
It's
me.
a really hard question for me. I think
Of all the
Jewish
deep
food was
academic things
yes.
you could answer,
I think
this is-
Jewish
Yep.
food was one of the things that really drew me to Judaism because it was all so delicious.
And it was my mom's cooking.
And
so-
that's true. Yeah, Wendy makes some delicious food.
I will say Heather bakes really, really good challah. That she
Oh,
was
you know
part
what? I
of
have
learning.
to go with challah. I gotta go with challah. I haven't really had a whole lot of challah that I don't like, and when challah is really good, it
Oh,
really
when it's good,
it's
it's
like
really
life
good.
changing.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So yeah, a good eggy, light challah.
Yep.
I will credit you. I will credit Heather that
Thank
the
you.
best challah I've had she's made.
Oh
I mean,
my
it's and I'm not
gosh.
just saying this because it's public.
Will
Like this
you marry
is
me?
again, sure. I would be happy to every day.
I don't know. How humble are you?
I think, didn't we cover this?
The most humble. I'm like Moshe Rabbeinu level
Oh,
humble.
great. Okay. Sounds
Oy,
great.
oy, oy.
And finally, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Oh, Purim.
Oh,
I don't even
Yom
have
Kippur.
to. So this is we have this question every once in a while. We re-rank all the 10. I mean the 10 big ones.
Yeah.
We live at a lot
We
of the minor
sit
fast
down,
days.
we write down all the holidays, and we do it, and then we talk about
That
it.
is the
Yeah.
sweetest, nerdiest
It's
Jewish
such a
thing I've ever heard.
nerdy
One
clergy
time we did a
couple.
bracket. One time we.
Sort of-
Fabulous.
It was so good.
Oh my God, I
it was so
love
good.
this. I
and,
love this.
And I will tell you, every time since we've started doing this, Purim is my number one, and Yom Kippur is Heather's number one, and Yom Kippur is my number two, and Yom Kippur is Heather's number.
I don't know,
Purim.
Sorry, Purim is Heather's number two, and this was not by design. I think that it really speaks to sort of who we are because those holidays are their sister holidays. I mean, they represent the same thing,
Yom
the fragility of
Kippurim.
life. Right, Yom HaKippurim, a day that is like Purim. They represent the sort of fragility of life. Purim says, all right, let's embrace it and throw a party then because these things are topsy-turvy. Yom Kippur says, let's embrace it by working on ourselves and our relationships with God and community. And they serve to do very similar functions in different ways. And it kind of worked out that we love both of those on the flipped side of each other.
It's the yin to the yang.
It absolutely is.
Absolutely.
It absolutely is.
This has been fabulous.
Well, we've
Cantor,
had a good time.
Yeah, I've had fun.
Rabbi Sammy, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for having me up here in your office, Rabbi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on
Glad to
on
get to
Who the
meet you
Folk.
both, and wish you each the best of luck in your continued settling into both our Adath and Minnesota Jewish communities.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
You
so
too, and your
much.
22 years
Yeah.
of being new.
Thank you very much. I
Since you're
appreciate
brand new.
We're all new. Thank you.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.